the singer in our family. So welcome to the Florida TUG, everybody. Kevin Flerlage with us today, and he is going to give us some insights on things that we never saw coming. So I can't wait to dig into that. It's always great to learn from one of our three-time Tableau visionaries now. So lots to learn there. DJS here from India, fantastic. We'll be attending TC22 virtually, yes. Well, welcome from India. We've got some folks from Italy and India. I'm in sunny Orlando, as you could probably tell from the sunshine on my face. Folks from Miami, great. Ooh, we have a TC sneak peek.
Feels like you're rubbing it in, Jeff.
I'm trying. Hey, listen.
It's dreary here.
Well, I happen to know you were just on a cruise and you were just here not long ago, so.
That's true, I was. I came passing through your sunny state to go to the Bahamas, so.
Awesome, awesome. All right, well, I'm gonna go ahead and get us started here. We're so excited for our meeting today, and there's just so much that we're gonna get an opportunity to learn. We've got a few slides here to kick off the Florida Tableau user group. This virtual group, we're really trying to coordinate across the state of Florida and just work with all of the teams as much as possible. So many of us are here in Orlando, but we're really thinking, you know, from the state and globally, as you can tell, we've got some international folks joining us today. We love to share what we're learning about Tableau. We love to work with this community. It always gives back. It's kind of one of those things, you know, the more you give, the more it seems it just comes right back to you. So we all love to do that. I'm Jeffrey Baker. I'm hosting the session today, but this is the leadership team that we have for the Florida group. So you can kind of see a little bit about who we are. So all of us spend a lot of time thinking about, you know, what can we do? How can we bring, you know, great people in who can help us all learn and grow. And, you know, while we've got a visionary with us today, sometimes just, you know, talking to somebody who's struggling through something, we love to do that as well. And we all learn from all those different things. So if you're interested in presenting or sharing something you're working on, you know, you don't feel like you have to be a guru at this or that you have to be, you know, somebody who knows everything. You know, quite honestly, one of the tips that I learned years ago was, you know, how I can make a little image appear on a tooltip. And I learned that right here on this TUG, and it's a really neat feature, but somebody just kind of helped share it with me, and it was something I didn't know. So if you're working on something, you know, this is a great opportunity to highlight it. So please reach out to us. There's a lot of ways you can connect with us as a leadership team. We have the LinkedIn group here, of course. You can email us as well, orlandotug@gmail.com. So we monitor that. We have a Slack channel. Pretty much any way that you would like to get a hold of us, you can certainly do that. And, you know, we talked a little bit about TC 22. That's May 17th and 18th in the US. I think it's going into the 19th, you know, as it moves across the globe. But if you are going to be there in person, please let us know. We do have some folks from the Florida TUG that will be out there. It would be really awesome to connect in person. So if you're able to do that, please let us know. And maybe we can get a picture of all of the people that we've kind of interacted with this year out at TC22. I'm still encouraging them to bring that conference to the Orlando Convention Center. So I'm speaking up for that, just primarily because I'm in Orlando. But hey, you know, let's do it, Florida. Let's go. Come on, let's go.
Yeah.
Anyway, I had to share that. And then I want to turn it over to Kevin Flerlage again. I only stumble on your last name because I didn't want to stumble on your last name. So, you know, there it is. You could probably run some machine learning algorithm on, you know, the number of times that happens. But anyway, Kevin is going to kind of take us through some stuff. I mean, if you haven't heard of Kevin, then, you know, you're really missing out. Him and his brother do a lot for our community, the Tableau community. They have an incredible blog that they post things. You can follow them through LinkedIn, Twitter. I mean, they're pretty much out there. And they really work hard to help all of us who may not do this stuff constantly be able to learn and grow. And so, you know, with that, we're really thrilled for Kevin to be here. And Kevin, I'm going to go ahead and turn the session over to you. And we're just glad to have you. So thank you so much for taking time out.
All right. Thanks for having me. You can see my screen okay?
We got you. Looking great.
Right. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. Yes, I did come through Orlando just about a week ago, or a little less than a week ago. We went down on a little, our kids had spring break, so we left the kids at home, and me and my wife went on a cruise. So we were down in the Bahamas, and we've been off that cruise since Friday, and I am still wobbly from it for whatever reason. So anyways. But I am jealous that it's so sunny there because it's dreary and chilly here. So, oh well, soon enough. All right. I think you kind of covered the introduction. My name's Kevin Flerlage. I didn't update the slide. I'm a 3-time Tableau Zen Master, which they've rebranded as Tableau Visionary. Jeff did a great job of saying, and I didn't. And I work for a small company in Cincinnati, Ohio, where I'm the manager of business intelligence. I am an identical twin. This is me on the left here. This is my brother Ken on the right. She cuts his hair a little closer than I do. I'm still clinging on to what I have. And we run the website Flerlage Twins, as Jeff mentioned. And we're both Tableau Visionaries. Ken's a 5-time Tableau Visionary, and I'm a 3-time Tableau Visionary. We will be presenting at the Tableau Conference. I don't know that the schedules are quite finalized yet, but we will be presenting there just on some tips and techniques. The session's called How to Do Cool Stuff in Tableau because it's kind of a mixture of things. So, and kind of today is going to be a mixture of things as well. So we are identical twins. And Erica mentioned that she has identical twins. So she was kind of asking some questions, but people always want to know how alike are we? Well, we can kind of use some, I don't know if you want to call it data, but we can kind of show some data to compare us. So where we live. Well, we both grew up in the same town, but Ken chased a girl about 20 years ago. So we grew up in Burlington, Kentucky, and it's about 20 minutes outside of Cincinnati, Ohio. Ken met a girl in Scotland, and she happened to live in Pennsylvania. So Ken followed her up to Williamsport, Pennsylvania, which is 20 minutes outside of absolutely nothing. Their claim to fame is a Little League World Series, but there's literally nothing else around. They're 3 hours from, if you say, how far from Pittsburgh are you? They're 3 hours. How far from Philadelphia are you? 3 hours. How far from Baltimore? 3 hours. So they're 3 hours from everything. What we like to visualize. Ken likes to visualize serious topics like religion, wars, endangered species, politics, where I like to tackle the really hard-hitting subjects like Adam Sandler, video games, kids, movies, and famous hot dog eating competitions. And if you're not aware of this, in New York, Coney Island, they do this every year on the 4th of July, and they eat as many hot dogs and buns as they can in 10 minutes. And this guy right here eats like 75 hot dogs in 10 minutes with buns, real size ones. It's insane, crazy. All right. So who's this? The most asked question we get is who's the best? Who's the best of this Tableau stuff? So we can use some data for that. This is a viz by Josh Tapley called Cerebro, and he scrapes Tableau Public and he determines some different metrics about people on Tableau Public. So we can zoom into this and we can see number of followers. Andy Krabel's always at the top of every single list. Then you have Jewel Laurie, and then you have me in third, and Ken a distant fourth. So 1 check mark for me. And then we can look at number of favorites on Tableau Public. Andy Krabel, again, always at the top of the list. But then you have me in second, Ken in third, a distant third, I'll say. So check number 2 for me. And I like to do that to Ken. Ken is actually using Tableau 2 years before I even downloaded the software. He was a DBA for 10 years. He's better at this stuff. I'll give him credit. I learned a lot from him. It's been great kind of learning beside him. So yeah, Ken gets the nod, even though the numbers say that I'm better. So. All right, we kind of went through all this stuff. We don't need to go through that again. Today we're going to be talking about we're doing two kind of sections. I'm going to do some speed tipping. We're going to just look at some tips and tricks, and there'll be probably a chunk of it, hopefully there'll be a few things that you don't. And we'll look at some new features in that as well. And then the second part, we're going to do something called tips you never saw coming, but never saw being highlighted there. We'll get into what that means here momentarily. All right, well, we're going to just jump into Tableau. All right, so we're looking at this chart that just looks at sum of sales by subcategory. The design of this chart is nothing fancy, so ignore that. I just wanted to kind of call out a few things. So in this case, we're monitoring 3 subcategories. Obviously, the ones that we're concerned about, the ones in orange, art, chairs, and machines. So what I want to introduce is a new feature, newish feature, came out in about the last year, is the in operator. So if we look at this calculation as I currently have it, and here's a little tip. If you're doing a presentation, all you got to do is hit the control and your mouse wheel, and you can zoom into a calculation, make that larger. So what I have is a simple case statement that says when subcategory is art, machines, or chairs, then label it as concern, else no concern. So those are the ones in orange, but we want to flip this over to an in operator just to make it a little more simple. So we don't have to write out when and then and when and then for every single thing. I mean, they're really just the same. So let's start by leaving this. I want to be able to see what's here. So let's just start by commenting these things out. This is kind of annoying. It's taking a little while. So we're going to flip this out. If you didn't know, another new feature recently is block comments. If you're a SQL guy, you know that you can use block comments in SQL. You can use them in Tableau now. But before we get to that, let's get rid of these. I'm going to show you another little trick. I'm going to hold the Shift key and press arrow to the right. We're going to highlight that. Everybody's done that a million times. I'm still holding Shift, but I'm going to also hold Alt. And we can do a vertical select as well. This works in SQL. I have things where I've got select statements in SQL that, I've got like 30 of them, and I just use this little trick, and I can add a tab, or I can add a couple spaces, or I can delete. So really easily, we can vertically select and just delete all of that. Now let's add a block comment. So slash and then a star and then a star and then a slash. Now we've commented that out. Instead of doing every single line, we just use these block comments. Now let's write our in statement. So we're going to say if subcategory in, and instead of saying when, then, we're just going to say if it's in art, or I'm going to leave machines out just for the sake of time, not chains, chairs. And then we're just going to say then concern, else no concern. Type and now if I apply this, we're going to lose machines here because we took that out, but we've really cleaned up our statement. In fact, we don't really even need this then concern, else no concern. We could just make it a true false and kind of save a couple extra lines of code. So there's kind of 5 little tips just talking about the in operator. We did 5 little tips just in that little section. All right. A common use case for a fixed LOD might be to find the most recent date in our data set, right? In this case, I've got these sorted in descending order, so it's pretty obvious that December 2018 is our most recent, but I want to use that in a calculation. So we might create a fixed LOD to get the max month. All right, let me zoom into this. Pretty simple. We're going to say fixed on nothing, which means we're fixing it on the entire data set. We're going to get the max month of the order date, right? Okay, so let's drag that to our view. All right, it goes to year. So then maybe we come down here and click exact date. Then it jumps to continuous. And then I can come over here and make it discrete. Finally, okay, we get our fixed LOD that says December 2018. That business always drives me crazy. So let's just get rid of that. Instead of just dragging it normal, I'm going to right click and drag, not left click and drag, but right click and drag. And when I do that, we get this menu of options, lots of different things that we can do with it. If I pick this one, hit OK, then I get my December. I don't have to change it to an exact date and then change it back to discrete. I don't have to do all that. So we have now December 2018. It's the max date in our data set. Great. I call this thing here fixed LOD hold the fixed, because when you write a fixed LOD and you fix it on nothing, you don't even need the word fixed. You can just get rid of that altogether and it'll still show that same value. So if you're fixing it on category, subcategory, or something like that, then you'll need to write it out. But if it's fixed on the entire data set, you don't even need the fixed. A fairly new feature in Tableau is quick LODs. So let's clear this out of here and I'll show you how this works. So here we've got category, subcategory, and sales. But let's say we want to calculate the sum of sales at the category level. So we want to sum up these numbers here and get the sum of sales at the category level. So we would maybe use a fixed LOD to do that. Say fixed on the category, give me the sum of sales. Really simple fixed LOD. We can do that with something that Tableau calls a quick LOD. So what I'm going to do is click on sales. I'm going to click on our measure, and then I'm going to click on our dimension. Now I'll warn you, you can only do this with one dimension. And I'm going to hold control while I'm doing it. And then I'm going to right click. And if you're holding control while you're doing that, it'll give you this option for LOD calculation. And here we go. Fixed on category. Give me the sum of sales. If I hit OK, it drops there. We'll put that on our view and we'll see some numbers. If you're messing with Superstore very often, some very familiar numbers. There's another way to do that. Well, I should note, if you just select these and you right click, there's no LOD option. You have to pick a measure, you have to pick a dimension, and then that create LOD calculation will pop up. Another way to do that is to just pick the measure and then drag it. Now, normally when we do this, it wants to change it to a dimension when I'm dragging it up here, but if I press and hold control, you'll see this dimensions and measures things disappear. And then I can drop it on the category and it'll create this calculation. If I edit this, same as before, fixed on category, sum of sales, drop it on the view, same number. So some quick LODs for really great for people that are learning how to utilize and how to write fixed LODs. Probably not a major time savings for someone that's been around for a while. All right, order of operations. One of my favorite things to talk about is order of operations because it is game changing once you understand it. So I would say for me, 98% of the time, what I do with order of operations is using context filters. Okay, most people are probably really familiar with that, but let's say we're using a fixed LOD and then we want to filter our data set. So how does that work? Well, in the order of operations, fixed LODs come first and then dimension filters come afterwards, right? So we calculate our fixed LOD and then we filter. So if we want to filter before our fixed LOD, which for me, I would say 95% of the time I want to do that, we change the dimension filter to a context filter. Now we're not going to talk about that. I would just kind of want to level set us as this is really the most common use for, using the order of operations. But there are a large number of other reasons you might want to do it as well. So this data is looking at the favorites from Tableau Public. It's not updated, but I mentioned before I was number 2, Andy Crable was number 1, Kim was number 3. We've got amazing people: Adam McCann, Pradeep Kumar, Jeff Schaefer. Jeff Schaefer happens to be my boss. He's the COO of my company. So what I've done here is I'm showing the favorites and then I'm ranking them. So we have this table calculation of rank. If you're not familiar with it, just rank the sum of favorites. And you see it's taking these sum of favorites and it's ranking them 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is a table calculation. So I'm curious, I mentioned Jeff and me, and I've got a couple other people in my company. I'm curious as to where they are on this list. Now, this is an abbreviated list, I'll warn you ahead of time, but let's just add a filter on profile name. So this is the name here. And let's just go add all these different people. So myself, Jeff, again, abbreviated list, Danushki de Lavera, which you may know. Jennifer Dawes doesn't work with us anymore, but I'm going to add her anyways. And you see what happened is, wait a minute, it's got me at 1 and Jeff at 2. I thought I was at 2 and Jeff was at 6, and we wouldn't know where Jennifer and Danushki were. So what the heck is happening here? Well, it all comes back to the order of operations. I'm using a table calculation to calculate the rank. Table calculations are calculated here, but I'm using a dimension filter by profile name, right? I'm filtering on profile name. So what's happening? I'm filtering down to those 4, and then I'm computing the rank. So let's see what's happening. We're filtering down to 4 people, and then we're ranking those 4 people as the whole group. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's not what we want. What we really want is table calculation of rank to calculate first, and then we filter. We want to see how each person is among the entire population. So let's get rid of this profile name filter, and we're going to trick Tableau by taking profile name and turning it into a table calc filter. What does that do? Well, dimension filter here, table calc filter here. So table calculation calculates here, table calculation filter calculates after that. So what that'll do is, if we can get this to work, it'll calculate the rank, and then we'll filter after it's calculated the rank. So we're going to trick that using a lookup function. If you ever use the lookup function, you probably use it for month over month or year over year, where you're looking back. You're going lookup to the sum of sales minus 1. You're looking back 1 row in that partition, right? Well, we're going to trick it, and we're going to do it on lookup name, which isn't even a measure. So we're going to add an aggregation to profile name, but instead of going minus 1 or plus 1 or something, we're just going to say 0. So what is this doing? It's looking up the profile name. It's doing exactly what the profile name filter, dimension filter, did, except we're turning it into a table calculation. So let's put this up here, set it to all for now, and show that filter. And I'm going to just do exactly what I did before. Kevin, Danushki, Jeff, and Jennifer. And what you'll see is this answered the question that we had. We wanted to know, where did the rest of my company fall in line is ranked on Tableau Public? Well, we have it. Me at 2, Jeff at 6, Jennifer at 75, and Danushki at 122. So we've answered that question, and we've able to kind of bend the order of operations to allow us to come in and let that table calculation happen first. This is really common when we're looking at creating bands, big numbers, right? You might just want to show one big number at the top that shows your most recent year, and you want to show how it compares to the previous year. So we're looking at year, we're looking at total sales, and we're looking at the percentage change. So we lost, went down 3% from 16 to 17. From 18 to 19, we increased sales by 20.36%. So we want to isolate this 20.36%, right? So the inclination might be, let's just show a filter on the year, and we'll filter out everything but 2019, right? Well, you saw what happens when I removed 2018, I lost that calculation, because what's happening? I'm filtering first, a dimension filter, and then I'm calculating the table calculation. Well, if I come over here and I get rid of the thing I'm using for the table calculation can't calculate anymore. So we want to do the same thing. We could go and do something similar that we did before and use a lookup function, but we really want this to be dynamic. We want it to be always the last row. We want it to always be the most recent dates. Now I know mine says 2019. We really want it to say 2020 or 2022, but we want it to be the last row. So we don't want to specifically pick a year. So we're not going to do that lookup thing. We're going to do a different table calculation. And this table calculation is called the last function. The last function counts backwards, starting at 0. So if I have 4 rows in my data, in this view, I have 4 rows. This is going to be row 0, row 1, row 2, row 3. So this calculation is just saying last equals 0. So it's always saying this row, give me the last row, and it's just a true false. So if I add that, it's a table calculation. So what's going to happen? I'm going to calculate this, let me go back there. We're going to calculate this percentage change first, and then we're going to filter on it. So that percentage change should theoretically still be there. So let's drag that over. We're just going to set it to true, and we'll see what happens. Boom, it shows me the last row, but since I'm using it as a table calculation, didn't truly filter out that row. Well, it did filter out that row, but it filtered it out after this table calculation computes. So we can isolate our band just by getting rid of that and showing header, and all of a sudden we have this nice band that we can put at the top of our thing, and that's just using the order of operations to kind of get things to compute in the direction that we want them to. All right, away from order of operations, just a few little tricks that you can do in Tableau. So this might not be the greatest use case, but if you have a dashboard that's packed with a lot of charts, most people would say, well, and regardless, no matter if they're packed or not, you really want to remove clutter. But this happens to work really, really well when you've got a lot of charts on the screen. What I want to do is I want to just get rid of some of this stuff. Now, I'd probably direct label this and it would probably not be an issue, but let's just say this is crammed in a little small space and I just want to get rid of this zero. The zeros, I want it out of my way. So what I can do is right click and format, and I can trick Tableau into thinking the zero is in a different format. So first step I have to do is set a custom format. So let's just set it to currency. We'll just set it to look exactly like it did. Instead of automatic, we want it set to currency. So now if I click over to custom, we have this weird, I don't know, I call it gobbledygook. Like, what does this represent? Does anybody know? Hopefully some people do. But what this represents is everything before the semicolon is the format of a positive number. Everything after the semicolon is the format of a negative number. But what you don't see here is anything after another semicolon is the zero value. So I could hit semicolon and type the word Ken if I want to say Ken is a zero. And if you see down here, it changes my zero to Ken. I could, change it to a dash if I wanted to. Not a K dash, just a dash. But what I tend to do is just come in here and hit semicolon space, and boom, our zero is gone. And it just removes a little bit of clutter. Now, just so you make sure you caught that, I'll go ahead and do this again. Right click format. Again, you can't have it automatic. You got to set it to a specific custom format. So I'm just going to set it like that. I'm going to go custom, and I'm going to hit semicolon space, and boom, my zero disappears. Now, this is really useful in a lot of different use cases. We've got a diverging bar chart here. Now, I'll kind of give you my thoughts on diverging bar charts. I hate them. I think they're really hard to compare. Hard to compare this to this, but they are used. So, and if I were to do it, I would probably directly label these bars instead of using an axis. But if you want the diverging bar chart and you want to use an axis, we have a problem, because this diverging bar chart is measuring. Let's say we did a poll questions, and we interviewed men and women, and we wanted to see how they answered these specific questions. Well, all I did to make this bar point to the left is put a negative in front of it, right? So we've got negative percentages and positive percentages. Well, there's no real negative percentage of a group of people, so this axis doesn't really make sense. So we can use that little trick we just learned to change that negative into a positive. So I'll format this. It's already set as a custom format. So I'm going to click over to custom. Now you see the only format, there's no semicolon there. So this is just showing a positive number. So I can add a semicolon and put -0%, and that will set the negative values. Just so you know, if I change this, and then I could add, a semicolon space and get rid of the zero. But what I really want to do is get rid of that negative. So let's get rid of that negative. And all of a sudden, these negative percentages now show as positive percentages. So you always want a positive percentage of people, because it's impossible to have -10% of people, right? So some cool little tricks you can do with the axis. And I should note, there's some really great blog posts out there that show you all kinds of things that you can do with this. I've got one coming up here in the next month or so, a guest blog post from Kasha, and I'm not even going to try and pronounce her last name. She's amazing, but she's going to talk about how we can do lots of cool things with this axis, and to show kind of year over year trends and things. So things that you would never think you could do with custom formatting. All right, on to a new topic. I am showing sales by state, and when I show sales by state, I tend to want to use a hex map for that. If you're not familiar with a hex map, you can go to flerlagetrends.com, search for hex map, and I'll show you. But it's basically little hexagons that represent a map, and we use color to designate, the sales volume, right? So I like to use a hex map. So what do we do when we use a hex map is we typically go to this data source, and then we go join to either a spatial file. Some people have some spatial files. Matt Chambers created an Excel spreadsheet, so you can go join to an Excel spreadsheet. But sometimes you can't even join. Use whatever data set you're connected to. Sometimes you're not able to join, and sometimes it's, well, every time it's unnecessary. You don't need to create you don't have to join to bring in a hex map. What I've done is just create a big, huge case statement. So instead of bringing in the coordinates via Excel or via shapefile, I just brought in a case statement that says when Alaska, then 0.5 and blah, 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 right? So we have that for column and row. If I drop this on, and I don't know why they're reversed, but I'll reverse it, we can start to see what looks like a hex map, right? So anytime I need to create a hex map, I never, ever join. I just copy and paste these hex columns and hex row case statements. Now, you might be curious how I created that. That looks like a painful process to write that all out in Tableau. So another little tip is use my case statement generator. This is something I've got on our website. You can download it in Excel. And what it does is save you all that time of typing the when and the then and the when and then the when and then. And all you have to do is come in here and use a couple of different fields, and you just copy paste in them. So for example, here is Matt Chambers' hex coordinates for a hex map. All I would really need to do, let's say we're creating the column, is just copy these, paste them. We'll put state in here. And then, oh, there it goes. Took a second. And then all I have to do is copy this out, go into Tableau, create new calculation, and I have a case statement with 15, 20 rows that took me seconds to build versus typing it all out. So case statement generator, a cool little trick to save you a bunch of time. All right. Last one we're going to look at. This is what I tend to refer to as the spaghetti mess. It's sum of sales by month and broken down by state. So you could probably guess these big peaks here are probably California or Florida or something like that. But how do I make sense of this? Well, I might, throw state on color. Yikes, that's even worse, right? I mean, that's impossible to understand at all what's happening. So what we tend to do is use a parameter for this. So we might want to create a state parameter and allow a user to pick a state from that list, and then we'll highlight it, right? So let's create that state parameter. I'm going to find, or I'm going to just go over here and hit create parameter. We'll call it state parameter. We'll make it a string. Then we want to make it a list. And then we want to go find this and fill in state. All right, so now we have a state parameter. That took, 5 steps to create? There's a much easier way. All we have to do is find state, right click, create parameter. It will name it. It'll make it a string parameter, and it will pre-populate it with your states. So a couple of clicks versus 5 or 6 clicks. So we've already done that. We have this parameter up here, and right now it does absolutely nothing. Just like any parameter, you have to tie that parameter into a calculation to get it to do something, right? So we're going to look at this calculation highlight by state. All it says is when the state parameter equals the state in my viz, the value is going to be true. We're going to take that, drop it on color, drop that on color. We'll set the true values to red. I'll set the false values to that dark color. And now when I pick this, and I'll pick something you can actually see, Texas, it'll highlight that line throughout. So allows my users to pick the state they're interested in, and we can see the trend over time. We could also drop this on the size if we wanted and make that a little bit bigger, but we'll bother with that for now. Okay, so we've got this, and we've got this dashboard, and now I can pick a state, and it'll highlight down here. I've also got this bar chart. So this is showing sales over month by month. This is showing aggregate sales over time. So we see big spikes for California and New York, of course. So let's first start by adding that color into this chart as well. So highlight, we'll throw that on color. So now as we select, say, New York, we'll highlight the bar in red, and we highlight the line in red. Now, we've got all the states here in front of us. It seems kind of silly to be using this drop-down parameter. So I say we get rid of this and we allow the user to just directly click on a bar to select it. Now, something weird just happened to where this thing's all turned white. And that's kind of a default setting in Tableau where it highlights the thing that you picked, but not the thing that you didn't pick. And when you're on a dark screen, especially, this is really, really weird. Now, I don't design with a lot of dark screens, but it does the same thing with white screens, and it just looks really bad on a dark screen. So we'll come back to that and we'll fix it. But let's set up a parameter action so that when I click on a bar, it'll highlight that bar and highlight down here. Essentially, what it's going to do is change this parameter by clicking on a bar versus us, having these states here in front of us and having to come over here. It's just a weird customer experience. So I'm going to come up here to dashboard actions. I'm going to go to this sheet just so I don't have to see everything. Change parameter. We're going to go to the bar chart. We're going to set it to change the state parameter, and we're going to feed in a value of state. We're going to do that on select. And normally I would name this, forgive me for not. So now what's happening when I click on this, it should feed that state name into our parameter. And when that parameter changes, it's going to change the highlighting in both charts, right? So we click California. There's that weird highlighting again. Let's deselect that. And so now it's highlighted California here and California here. If I pick New York, highlights New York here. Again, weird highlighting, and it picks New York here. So that's really nice. What I'd like to do is to not have anything selected. Like I want it all to be gray. Let's start off with a clean slate. Let's make it all gray. So how do I do that? Well, there's a new feature, newish feature in Tableau in a parameter action right here called clearing the selection will. So clearing the selection will do what? Well, right now it's set to keep current value. So as we clear the selection over here, it just keeps New York in that parameter. If we set it to do something else, we have to put in a value here. So set value to AAAA. I don't know of any state named AAA. So theoretically, I've got this set to when I clear, it'll send a value of AAAA to the state parameter. And since there's no state in our viz named with 5 A's, it should basically clear everything out. Nothing should be read. So let's try that. So let's just make sure we kind of get ourselves set. Weird highlighting again. And then if I clear it, nothing seems to have happened. So what do we do wrong with that dashboard action? Let's go back here. I said set value to 5 A's when I clear it, but it seemed to just keep it as is. Well, the problem is we set this thing up as a list parameter. So this is set up as a list parameter. And guess what? AAAA is not in the list of values that are allowable. We don't need this list anymore because we're using a parameter action to do it. So let's just set it to all. We're going to allow all values. So it still works when I click New York, it sends New York in. If I click on California, it sends California in. Still have that weird highlighting, but if I deselect here, it sends a value of AAA. There's no state with those values, so everything is cleared and nothing's read. All right, the last thing I'm going to address is the thing I mentioned about 7 times. Is this weird highlighting. It drives me crazy. So this is something I do. You know what? We don't need this anymore. This is something I do in every single dashboard I create. I create the most complicated calculation you can possibly do to clear out this highlighting. And I call this the fake highlight. It's super complicated. It's 2 quotes only. That's all it is. You can put anything in here you want, but all you need is 2 quotes. And you drag that onto detail. I've already got it on there. And we'll come back to this dashboard, and I'm going to click this just so you can see what's happening. You still have this weird highlighting. I'm going to go to dashboard actions, this sheet, and I'm going to create a highlight action using that fake highlight. So we're going to do the bar chart. Back to the bar chart, we're going to pick this selected fields, and we're going to pick, fake highlight. So the bar to the bar, selected fields, fake highlight on select. And when I hit OK, watch what happens here. When I hit OK, that highlighting is gone. Now watch when I select this. That weirdo highlighting is completely gone. So what's this doing? It's just essentially faking a highlight action. It is faking a highlight action. It's clearing out our highlight. So now we have this much better user experience. We don't have all our bars turning white every time we click somewhere. All right, that was a lot, and I went longer than I normally do. So we'll try and kind of push along on the second section. So the second section we talked about was tips you never saw coming. Never saw coming, right? Really exciting and mysterious, right? The reason you never saw them coming because they're invisible. Now I'm solving nobody's curiosity at this point. What I'm talking about is something called a transparent shape. This still may not be clear on what I'm talking about here, but I'm going to show you what I mean. So I am going to create a transparent shape, and then I'll show you how we're going to use it. Let's just get rid of this for now. I'm going to insert a shape. I'm going to pick a square. By the way, if you hit the control key while you're doing that, it'll make it a square versus a rectangle. The shift key. It'll keep the 1-to-1 ratio. And then I'm going to come over here to shape fill and hit no fill. Shape outline, hit no outline, and our shape has disappeared. But not really, it's still there. It's just invisible. I can right click on that, and then I can do save as picture. Then I can save that as a shape in my Tableau Shapes repository. We can use that as a shape, as an image as well, and I'll show you a couple different things we'll use it for, but the Shapes repository comes in really, really handy. So I'll show you a couple of things that we can do with this. Some of them are really exciting, in my opinion, exciting. So we'll start off kind of simple here. We've got this basically text table just to show our hierarchy. We got category and the subcategory and the manufacturer. And I don't want any measures on here. It's just to show me the hierarchy of these products, right? I have this weird ABC thing here. It wants me to put it. Tableau is expecting me to put a measure in there. I don't want to measure. So what I used to do to get rid of that ABC is change it to a polygon. Boom, it's gone. The problem is with animations, if you use animations, including the transitions as you filter and things, polygons break that. If you have this sheet on a dashboard and this has a polygon in it, it will not work because polygons do not animate. So I don't like that solution. I could change it to text and put quote, quote on text maybe and drop that on the text card, right? I could do that, but I don't like the fact that I can select it still. I don't want anything to do with it. It even shows the quotes in the tooltip. I could make it a circle and just, change the opacity or make it really small, but that circle's still there. It's just odd that I can select it. So my favorite trick is just to change this to a shape. We'll come over here and pick more shapes. And you'll see I use transparent shapes so much that it's at the top of my list. And I've got a bunch of transparent shapes in here. You can't see them, but they're there. And I'm going to assign a transparent shape. And now it's not in the tooltip and I can't select it. So it's a really clean experience of getting rid of this ABC. Now, I don't do this often, but there are lots of cool other things that you can do with this transparent shape. So this is a chart that I create at work a lot. This is basically a random line saying 50% of my accounts, I should expect 50% of my profit, right? Okay, that makes perfect sense. We create these models at work that help us to improve that. So we are able to say at 30% of my accounts, I've got at almost 50% of the profit. So I've improved this by these different models. And this is a chart that I create for dashboards and even for marketing pieces. So how do I create that? Well, it would probably start off with a dual axis, a line, and a circle mark, right? Sum of profit, and we've just got this line and circle mark. So I could create a calculation to isolate the 30%. And that calculation might be if the percentage of accounts equals 0.3, hard coding, don't love that. Then give me the sum of profit, else null. And then I would drag that up and be that on my secondary axis. You know what? I don't want to do any of it. I don't need a calculation at all. All I need to do is change this to a shape. Then I'm going to drag my percentage of accounts over to shape. Then I'm just going to change the shape. I'm going to select everything but 0.3, and I'm going to do this and make it a transparent shape and gone. Now I can't, the mark's still there, but I can't actually pick that little circle because it's now a transparent shape and I can't select it. So really nice. We can do the same thing on a line chart. Let's say that I just want to isolate the last point. We might have a calculation that says, let's do this one, maximum sales. I might create this big long calculation, make it my secondary. I'm going to just simplify it and say when the monthly order date equals the fixed max of the order date, well, then it's true. I'll change this to a shape, drop that onto shapes, and then we have true false over here. I'm going to change the true to a circle and change the false to a transparent shape. And we now have a nice chart with just the last value isolated, and that'll be dynamic since we're using a fixed LD to calculate the last month. So my favorite trick for using a transparent shape is bands. Okay, that doesn't really make much sense, but I'll show you why. Typically, we create a band, we just use the text mark, and when a user clicks on it, they get this. That's so odd. It's kind of like that default highlighting thing. Like, I have no control over this blue color. And what I found, and a lot of times I do want my users to interact with it, so I don't want to just put a blank over it. But what I found is this is really confusing to users. They like, uh-oh, what'd I do wrong? So I like to get rid of that. And I'm going to go to this, and I'm going to duplicate this sheet. And you see in the sheet, still the same thing's happening. So we can solve this using transparent shapes. I'm going to change this to a shape. You see the circle shape up here. I'm going to go to more shapes, transparent, and watch what happens. Now, when I select it, that blue is completely gone. It goes back to that ABC thing where I said, now you can't select it. The same thing's happening. I can't select it here. So it's just selecting the text. It looks really clean. So it's this versus this. I think the experience for a end user is just phenomenally better. I do this every single time I create a big number, a band or KPI that uses the text card because this is just so odd. This is something I did on the forums many years ago. Somebody wanted to look at sales see how many years ago it was. Sales in 2017 versus 2018 by month. So February 17 versus 18. And then they wanted to just have this little bubble to show the year-over-year change. So when I did this with a bar chart and then a circle mark, well, if you show a circle mark, it's going to show on both of these bars. Well, this one's transparent and this one's a circle mark. So nice little technique there. This one's from Luke Stanky, a fellow Tableau Visionary. He actually wrote about using transparent shapes as well. Funny, I was writing this blog post and then he came up with it and I was like, I got sniped. But I had a lot of different use cases that he did not. So I'll show you one of his. This is a chart that looks at sales by subcategory, but then he's marking the change from the previous year. So this is, call it sales in 2022. And then he's looking at sales in 2019 or 2021, and he's showing the change. So this one shows a red one, means it went from second to first. This one went from first to second, it went down one. This one went up 3 from the last year. This one's blank. That's kind of odd. So I think that's a little hard to read. So we can maybe add some color to it. So we've got a blue one. Okay, it went up 1. This one went down 1, up 3. Then we have this orange one. What did it do? Well, it's a 0. I just think we can make this a lot easier. So this one that went up 1 is going to be I think I need to make it that one, this one down. And for this one that did nothing, we're just going to make it transparent. Hit okay. Now all of a sudden, this makes the whole world a lot more sense than the other thing did. Up 1, down 1, up 3. This one didn't change. This one up 2. This one didn't change. This one didn't change. So another really simple use for transparent shape. You could come over here and make the color of this white, but if you have grid lines or anything behind it, then it's going to cover that. It just kind of looks sloppy. So transparent shape, really the best option there. So at the Tableau conference, I'm going to be showing a cooler way to do this, but I'm just going to show you this for now. Look for it on our website coming up soon as well. But if you were to type text like we have here, if you were to type out an entire URL in text, it will turn that into a hyperlink. So if I click on that, we're going to go to Tableau's Wikipedia page, right? So typing out an entire URL works really, really well. But what if you want to do it in text? You want to embed this URL on this Word Tableau software. Well, you can't really do that. There's no way to right click and embed a hyperlink. So what I've done is cheated. I've taken this text and I've made it blue and underlined it. So it looks like a hyperlink. It's not, I can't click anything. But what I'm going to do is float an image over the top of it. I'm going to go pick that transparent shape. I got a bunch of them. I centered it. And then we have this window, URL open when image is clicked. I'm just going to paste that link in there. So now what we have is this transparent image that you can't see, but it's got a URL tied to it. So now when I hover, I can click on that and it acts just like a URL, just like a hyperlink. So a cool little trick where you can just float things on top. I've done it down here to go to my blog post, or down here to go to the blog post, and down here to go to the website. So so I use that little trick all the time. Again, I'm going to show you a cooler way to do that. This one for me is mind-blowing in a few weeks. At work, when the pandemic struck, my boss came to me and said, "Hey, I really would like to dig into unemployment. How are we being impacted by unemployment?" And if you remember, unemployment spiked. It went to like 15% or something like that the month in April 2020. When I dug into this data, I found everything fascinating. This is probably May when I was doing it. And I ended up creating 18 different dashboards to dig into the unemployment status. Now, this is on our Tableau public page. You can search for unemployment, or the company is under is Recovery Decision Science, RDS. This gets updated every month, and a good resource, lots of views and lots of favorites on it. But when I was building it, I had 18 different dashboards, and I thought, how am I going to create some sort of navigation methodology to allow somebody to go what they want? I could just use text and use some sort of buttons, and I just didn't feel like it was good enough. So what I opted for is to create a bunch of buttons. I would take a screenshot of the dashboard, so export the image, and then I would bring it in as a navigation button. And I created this sort of visual table of contents, right? So you click on this, it goes to that particular dashboard, and then you can click back to the main menu. That's really nice, but as you're looking at this, you may be thinking to yourself, well, the unemployment situation sure has changed a lot over the last 2 years. It's been 2 years since that big spike. But if we look at our data, we see that big spike right here at the end. In fact, all these charts show the big spike at the end. And the reason was, and you can see all this dark, this is unemployment by county. The dark is bad. The reason for this is that I just took a screenshot, and I took a screenshot in April or May of 2020 when the situation was really dire. So lots of people have come to me and said, okay, that's a cool technique, but I really like for it to be dynamic. I want it to update when my charts and my data updates. So we can do that. Let's go over here. So in this case, I'm taking a screenshot of a dashboard. It'd be nice if I could drag my whole other dashboard onto this dashboard, but I can't do that. What I can do is drag sheets. So what I've done already is drag a sheet to represent a dashboard. So this first one is going to represent this hex map here, right? And I'm not sure what the other one represents. Doesn't matter. So what I can do is drag out 18 different sheets, and we can tile it and all that, right? Make it look nice. We can drag out 18 different sheets to make it look like our dashboard. And since the sheets are updating with the data, then this overview kind of table of contents will update with it, right? But the problem is, how the heck do I click on one of these sheets? See, I'm clicking and bringing up the title. How do I click on one of these sheets and make it navigate to that dashboard? Well, we can use another trick with a transparent shape or a transparent image. So I'm going to drag a navigation button, and I'm going to float it over the top like this. Okay, we're covering it. I'm going to set it to navigate to TOC page 1. I'm going to make it an image, and then I'm going to go choose a transparent shape. I would probably tile this and do this 18 different times, but if we put this into presentation mode, you can't tell that this transparent shape is there, but it is, and it's over top of the sheet that's updating dynamically. And when I click on it, it goes to that dashboard. So we can create this sort of dynamic table of contents using a transparent navigation button. A couple more use cases. That same technique that I just talked about, people are using all over the place for landing pages. So this is the landing page for my the viz that went along with my transparent shapes blog post. I could have created all these little hex shapes as individual little buttons, but I decided I'll just create this big background image in PowerPoint, and then I'll just overlay these buttons. right? So I just got these clear or transparent navigation buttons on top, and then I can have the freedom to create whatever background image I want, and I'll just lay things on top of it to turn it into a navigation. I love interactivity, right? So this is a chart that's looking at sales by month, and I want the user to be able to click on these buttons to filter down to different years, right? Now, what I've done is set up these buttons using parameter actions, and probably could use a filter action as well. I use a parameter action, and it's essentially filtering this sheet based on the year. So when I click on this, it'll filter this chart. But what I really drives me crazy, and maybe it's just my OCD here, but is this the way the button looks when I click it. It's got this weird outline. It's not consistent, and I don't like it. There are a couple different tricks using filter and highlight actions to get rid of that automatically, kind of like the highlight deselect thing, the fake highlight thing we did before. But a really simple one is using a transparent shape. I told you kind of from the onset that we can use a transparent shape and it won't allow you to select it. So I kind of just trick it. What I do is leave that stuff in the back. It's still operating with a parameter action, but then I float the same sheet. I duplicate this sheet, float the same sheet over the top of it. And instead of these buttons, I'm using transparent buttons. It still has 16, 17, 18, and 19 associated with it. And the parameter action will function on it. But when I click on this, when it's overlaid, I'll click on this transparent shape. There's no weird selection. So if we go back here and we see that sort of weirdness, and we see this, just a much cleaner user experience. In fact, we don't have that weird highlighting as well. I used a transparent shape in my no polygons technique, which I wrote years ago. Ken wrote about a scrollable timeline. Takes a little time to catch up, but pretty cool. We can click on this and get a different president, right? This uses a transparent shape. I've used it in games. You wouldn't believe it. So I help run the Cincinnati TUG, and we were planning in February 2020. We were planning a Tableau user group. It might have been January. We were planning a Tableau user group for March 2020. We were going to have 9 Zen Masters Visionaries in town and in March 2020. Obviously, you can all guess how that went. Never happened. But my colleague suggested we play a game. We play what he called Zennywood Squares. For all the young folks out there, you might not remember the game Hollywood Squares, but we were going to play the game Hollywood Squares using Zens, right? So I built a board game in Tableau, and I wanted it to be really clean. I don't want buttons all over the place. So we say if we want Steve Wexler in the center square, we would click it. And we've got, that was a collapsible container that I just opened, but I did it by clicking a transparent button. And then if he answers the question, if we get it right, we'll sign no. This is like tic-tac-toe, by the way. So if the next person went to Ken, we would select it and he gets the next. So I built this all using transparent shapes and collapsible containers. Now, probably the most, in fact, not probably, but in all of these, I've used maybe 3 or 4 transparent shapes or transparent images. In this dashboard, which is my data fam finder, I'll explain what that is in a second, I use 26,000 transparent shapes. All right, let me tell you first what this is. This is something on Tableau Public, and my goal was, let's connect people in different areas. If I were to, say, travel to Florida, what I can do is I can click on this. I can set a distance with this buffer calculation. Let's just say 200 kilometers. Hopefully that's big enough. No, it's not. I don't have enough people. Let's just say 500 kilometers for now. And I can say, I'm traveling to Florida. I'd like to know who's in Florida. That's part of the data fam, right? And maybe I'll look them up and I'll go have some lunch with them, right? Or have dinner. You guys need to register this because I don't see anybody on here. So you can register your name. Anybody who's registered, there's more than this, it's more like 500 now, but anybody who's registered shows up as a red dot. And then when I do the buffer calculation, it selects those. And then I can even, on Tableau Public, I can download a list and it shows their Twitter and LinkedIn account so I can connect with them, right? Cool. The problem is, how do I actually click somewhere in a map and create this buffer calculation? So this is a bad version of it. When I click in Brazil or anywhere, I'm clicking, if you can't tell, even down here, somewhere down here, in order to interact with a map or anything, any chart, you need to actually click on a mark, an actual mark. There are no marks here. There's nobody in Brazil. You see, I'm clicking and zooming in. So there's no mark to interact with. But the truth is, there are marks that are interacted with. So I'm collecting these names via Google Sheet. But what I've done is in that same Google Sheet is downloaded a list of 26,000 cities across the US, or across the world, not across the US, across the world. And I brought that in. So I have the people registered plus 26,000 cities, but I made those cities transparent. So I'll show you this. Just make this a star for now. All these marks, when I clicked here, I actually clicked on a mark. That mark just happened to be transparent. So what's that allow me to do? That allows me to basically, you can see on this map where there's nothing, the cursor is a pointer. In this case, there's marks underneath here that you can't see, and my cursor is a hand. That means there's a mark there. So what I'm doing is I am allowing myself to click on this mark. It is sending a Latin long value to a parameter, and then it's creating that bound for calculation, and then using the distance calculation to see who's in that area. So in this particular viz, in this dashboard, I use 26,000 transparent shapes. All right, that's all I've got for now. If you want to get to all these different things using transparent shapes, you can go to our website, just search for transparent shapes. I got 14 use cases on the website. I'll bet I've used it for 50 different ways. So some cool stuff, lots of time saving, and just helps you do some things that you really were almost impossible to do in Tableau otherwise. Special thanks to the people on screen. I won't name everybody. A lot of these tips and tricks came from those people and certainly were inspired by many others. So thanks to everybody. I don't know if we have time for questions, but if we do, happy to take them.
Thanks so much, Kevin. Appreciate your sharing with us today. I know that those went pretty fast, and for those who were following along, we will be, so the session is recorded today. We will be posting that session to Tableau's page, so that will be coming out. We'll send an email out from the Orlando TUG that basically will give you where the Zoom meeting recording is located, and you can come back and play through this and go through it at your leisure. So we really appreciate that. We are, literally just a little bit over our time today, so I don't know that we have a lot of questions, but not really sure we can afford to turn it over to to questions today. But I think we probably should wrap up then. So anything, Yumil?
Yeah, there is a question that comes on and on, Kevin, that I think it is interesting. So a lot of people were asking, did you came up with a naming convention for your calculated fields? They were looking at your calculated field and maybe have some type of, I found like 4 or 5 questions of that. So that was interesting.
Was it the @ symbol that everybody?
Yes, @ symbols or whatever.
Yeah, I'm weird. So my brother is a huge advocate for using folders with calculated fields. I don't love it. So I like to just put a character in front, sometimes use an @ symbol, sometimes an underscore, and it just brings those calculated fields up to the top. It's probably a terrible practice, especially because now you can filter down to calculated fields. It's just a habit I developed 4 or 5 years ago, and I've continued to do it. And a bunch of colleagues do the exact same thing. So it makes it easier for me to just filter down to the actual calculated fields really quickly.
Gotcha.
It's probably a terrible practice.
Awesome.
And this isn't a question, but just a comment. If you guys haven't checked out the Flerlage Twins blog, there is just great information on there. I probably looked through probably every article you have on there. And it's just great information for anyone of any skill level on Tableau. So check it out if you haven't.
Thank you. Appreciate it very much. And I did notice that you mentioned, the hyperlink in a tooltip. Yeah, you can absolutely do hyperlinks in tooltips. And the method you described, Kelsey, 100%, I would do the exact same thing. When you're in text, it becomes a little more challenging. You could certainly do, create a sheet and create a hyperlink that way if it was an actual sheet, but just in plain text is a little more complicated. Again, Hope people are coming to the conference. Come check it out because I'll show a cooler way of doing it. And if you're not, it'll be on our website here in the next couple of weeks.
Fantastic. Any other quick questions before we let?
Is there any other questions, Erica, that you see in the chat? I think that was the number one question.
Somebody asked about if you would have a case statement for cities or counties, not just states.
Like for the hex map that I did.
Yeah. Do you have like a number code case statement already built for cities or counties?
I don't, but what I have, I do have, I've written a blog post on using alternative map projections. And to do that, you end up needing a spatial file, and that uses FIPS codes. So I don't have anything for city, but I do have, the FIPS codes are on counties and states. So I do have FIPS codes. I have a breakdown of that in the spreadsheet. I'm not sure that I have anything for cities though. No. If you're interested in the FIPS codes, essentially you need the FIPS codes to be able to join to the spatial file. So I have basically a lookup file to give you the FIPS codes for county and state, and that's on the website if you search for alternative map projections.
For the hex map, what you were showing, the copy paste from the generator that you have, is that available on the website that we can copy paste? Is it available? Go ahead.
Yeah, if you search for case statement generator on, or just search for case, but yeah, case statement generator, there's a blog post on it. There's 2 blog posts because I updated it to include the in operator, because the in operator is basically to make a comma delimited list of values. But yeah, you can just go on there and download it. I know I created it, so I'm a little bit biased. I created it because I wanted it and then decided to share it. I use it all the time. If I have something that a case statement that's more than 4 or 5 lines, I just throw it in my spreadsheet. Usually you can copy fields out of Tableau and drop them right into that spreadsheet, and you create your case statement really, really quickly. So yep, it's available. You can download it.
Does it have those coordinates for the hex maps, or where can we get that you show when you pasted the so that if we want to create the hex map?
That is in a blog post as well, except it's in a tips blog post. If you give me 2 minutes, I can probably round it up. The wife's walking by. 1 second, tips. I gotta find it. If somebody has any questions while I'm looking for this, I can certainly answer that.
So someone was asking any passion or project that you're working on right now you're excited in this year. Somebody said something like that.
Yeah. All right, hold on give me one. Okay, here it is. I'll post this in the
chat.
Awesome. So this is a tips blog post, but the last tip is in that number 10 is a downloadable workbook where you can grab and copy and paste those hex coordinates.
Very nice.
So yeah, avoid joining. Passion projects. When I for the last couple of years, I really just loved creating business and created stuff on Tableau Public all the time. I'm having more fun now writing blog posts, and I've got a video out coming soon that I've kind of taken and upped everybody's probably familiar with Tableau Tim. He's got this really great video production, and I've not done a lot of video, so I've kind of tried to up the video production to be more like him. He's my video idol. So I've got a video coming out that are 5 super cool things you can do in web edit that you cannot do in Tableau Desktop. Usually we're used to the flip flop of, you can do all this in Tableau Desktop, but you can't do it in web edit because they're still working towards parity. But there are some really cool things you can do in web edit that you can't do in Tableau Desktop. So that'll be coming out here in the next month. That's kind of what I've spent a ton of time on. So no real passion projects as far as data visualizations. We've been spending a lot of time on our conference presentation. So, and just writing blog posts. So, but yeah, look for that one. That one's a fun one. It's got some really cool stuff in it. And I'll hint to you, you can create hyperlinks, real true hyperlinks in text using web edit. and where you can't in Tableau Desktop. So
I see.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah, I think there were so many. I mean, I don't know. I feel like so many good things that I learned today. I need to watch it again, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
To watch it
yeah,
again.
and I expected that. The intention
Yeah.
was sort of to be like speed tipping at the conference, which if you've never attended,
Yes.
Lorna Brown and
Mhm.
Ann Jackson will do it this year, and they go really, really fast. And sometimes you don't catch them all, and it's always good to just watch them back. So, so yeah, that was a little bit intentional. So sorry if I went too
No.
fast, but yeah, you got the video.
It was
So-
perfect.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. I don't see. Do you anybody see any other question that? I'm not sure. Let me see.
And
I really think, one of the things that I really enjoy, because this is something that I did before, but I never had the idea of doing it the way that you did it, is that when you had all those all the charts for the unemployment, where you can go to here, one or there. I had the same problem. I used to work for NBC Universal, and we created all these charts for marketing and sales, and we never could figure it out, how we can update that image. But we did it the same way. We created images, and then people could go to the specific dashboard. But I never had an idea of what can I do to create these images. I also had a lot of issues with the bands, the things that you show with the band. I hated all the blue backgrounds too. I mean, I always hated it. So I couldn't even figure out if there was a way to fix it or to make it better for sure. All those transparent ideas are amazing. I need to use that. I need to use that for sure. Yeah.
Okay, well, Kevin, thank you for your time today.
you.
Appreciate it very much. Looking forward to your sessions at Tableau Conference this year, and wish you and your brother continued success in all that you do. And many thanks for what you do for our community. You are greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Amazing stuff.
Thank you all for having me. Appreciate it.
All
Thank
right.
you so much.
Everybody have a great rest of your day.
Bye. Thank you.